I have to go back. A deported migrant to CNN. Guys, let's go ahead and check this out immediately. This is a suggestion via a channel member. Let's see where this takes us.
More than 100 migrants from Guatemala are now back in their home country. They were on board a U.S. military plane that landed in Guatemala City just yesterday. One of the migrants now tells CNN that he had been living in the United States for nearly 19 years. CNN's David Culver has exclusive new reporting from the tarmac when they arrived.
Okay. Guys, 19 years and you couldn't fill the paperwork out? Guys, I've immigrated to multiple countries. I say this often here because it's relevant. My wife has immigrated from Spain to the United States of America. Yeah, guys, it's not cheap. It's not cheap at all. I think her paperwork basically costs $4,500. My son costs $4,200. But either way, it's expensive. I get it.
Stepping off a commercial charter and onto Guatemala City's military tarmac, 124 migrants deported for illegally entering the U.S. Now back home. They process past officials, including the country's vice president, and into a reception hall. Cookies and coffee await. One by one, they're called up to be officially documented. Now that's a change from their status in the U.S.
10 años en los Estados Unidos. She lived 10 years in the U.S. in Alabama. She did roofing, construction, and car repair while in the U.S.
Okay. Here we meet Sara Totpotos. At 43, she says she carries a criminal record related to child endangerment.
Child endangerment?
She was shopping at Walmart con tu nieto, no?
Sí, con mi nieto.
With her grandson. And she said he didn't have a car seat, and she was pulled over as she was leaving the Walmart by a police officer in Alabama.
She went to jail for 2 months and was detained for 5 more months, she says, by immigration officials in Louisiana before being sent back here.
I mean, I get it, guys. I mean, I see the direction this video is trying to take, but it's like, listen, bro, how are you expecting me to feel like any type of way if she risks the life of her grandson? To put your kid, I guess they didn't say the age, right? But I'm guessing it was young if it's a car seat oriented thing. But if you care that little about your grandson in a car, I don't know what I should feel here, guys. But either way.
She says by immigration officials in Louisiana before being sent back here. She's actually grateful, thanking God for being back.
Pero tú quieres regresar a los Estados Unidos? Do you want to go back to the U.S.?
No, ya no.
Yeah, that would be a felony.
Sara, seemingly uncomfortable though, speaking with us in what she's wearing. She's eager to get to her bag, which sits in a pile of plastic sacks and stapled shut. And as she heads into the bathroom to change, we meet Fidel Ambrosio.
So how many years altogether did you live in the U.S.?
Almost 19 years.
19 years?
Yes. I'm scared. Because now the Trump, they say they have to go, go with a criminal, but we're not a criminal,
But you.
Where's your paperwork at? I mean, like, if you are an American citizen, this wouldn't have happened. I'm almost positive here. Or if your paperwork was actually being done, this wouldn't have happened here. So what exactly? You say you're not a criminal, but you overstayed your visa. I mean, every single country on earth has standards for immigration and deportation. But it seems like, again, people are moderately offended that we have standards for the first time in a very long time. It's crazy, guys.
Go with a criminal, but we're not a criminal,
But you have a trespassing conviction?
Yes.
So you're a criminal.
Are you going to try to stay here? Or do you think you'll go back?
I have to go back, for sure.
Does criminal mean something different,
While
guys?
Fidel walks freely here, others are pulled aside by Guatemalan police as soon as they arrive.
To go to jail.
Accused of crimes not only in the U.S., but also here in their homeland. They require a lot of resources so as to reintegrate the returnees.
Pues de momento no hay una diferencia.
Guatemala's vice president tells me it's about the same number, though, that have been arriving in recent years under President Biden. Though she says the use of U.S. military planes, which Guatemala is permitting, is new under President Trump. Back in the reception hall, we almost don't recognize Sara. She's changed into her indigenous wardrobe and feels more at home, now ready to step out.
No, ya tiene mi hija que ver.
And reunite with her daughter. Obviously, there's a lot of emotion in that moment between Sara and her daughter, and I asked both of them if they have any interest for Sara to go back to the U.S. or for her daughter to go for the first time, and they were adamant. They do not want to go, and it seems that in many ways tends to echo what the Trump administration is hoping to put out there in their messaging from these deportations in part, and that is a deterrence factor to keep people from wanting to go into the U.S. in the first place. However, then you meet others like Fidel, who said it doesn't stop him. He's going to try as many times as possible to get back to the U.S., be it legal or illegal.
Yeah, the next time this happens, you're going to get a felony.
David Culver, CNN, Guatemala City.
All right, we have brand new video just in to CNN. It was released by Homeland Security Secretary, the new Secretary, Kristi Noem, and it shows her presence at an immigration raid in New York City overnight. In her words, a criminal alien charged with kidnapping, assault, and burglary is now in custody. Again, she put out this video. With us now is former acting director of ICE, John Sandwig. Thank you so much for being with us. This video released by the secretary, the orders that we reported yesterday that people involved in these raids have been told to wear your jersey so people can see. We want this to be very much visible. Why such a public display, John?
You know, it's very interesting. I mean, first of all, obviously the reason why is I think the administration wants to draw a lot of attention to these raids and these operations. But what's interesting, John, is traditionally you don't want to draw attention to these operations until the operation is complete. And there are two very good reasons for that. The first is officer safety, especially when you're targeting individuals who who should have a nexus to public safety. You don't want to do anything to tip them where they might be lying in wait for an officer, especially if somebody's doing harm. So one of the...
That's moderately valid here, because based off of one of the last videos you guys sent me here, it basically said that she was actually looking for help from NYPD. I'm guessing for that specific reason.
The real cardinal rules of these types of operations is you don't do the publicity until it's complete. But the second reason is it reduces the effectiveness of the operation. As word gets out that you're targeting individuals with a nexus to the criminal justice system, those individuals tend to disappear. So during the Obama administration, when we ran these similar operations, what happens is over time, you start missing more and more of your targets because those individuals are no longer in the location that you expect them because they caught wind of the operation. So surprising in a way from an operational perspective that they're putting this much publicity on these operations, but politically, I think it makes a little bit of sense why they want to do that.
Right. So, guys, I'm going to point something out here. This is why it's important to make sure you look at both sides of the actual argument. I'm not someone who's stuck in an echo chamber, so I have no problem at all when you guys send me anything CNN oriented, unless they start getting crazy. I may say something, right? But the point is here, that's a really valid thing that this guy just said here. Like for the optics aspect, we know why it's being done. It has to be done like that. Because Americans are showmen. They like showmen, guys.
So I think in the last year of the Biden administration,
the showmanship of it
about
itself
300 apprehensions each day. It was a slow start in this new Trump administration, but they're now at about 1,000 a day, and that's their target. Besides the difference in the numbers, John, what do you see as the biggest differences in approach between the two administrations so far?
Well, the biggest difference is clearly the targeting. This administration has lowered the threshold for when, prior to one of these operations, a lot of work goes in, John, behind the scenes. The agency is running records from the criminal justice system, probation and parole records, cross-referencing that against immigration databases to try to identify the targets. This is a tactic that was done throughout ICE's history, the Obama administration and the Biden administration included. But what happens is when you're doing that, you set a threshold. What type of crime is a serious crime that we're going to prioritize? Are we going to arrest what we call collaterals, individuals that we encounter when we're going after the criminal who may not have any nexus to the criminal justice system? So the Trump administration has lowered the threshold, including individuals charged with less serious offenses like traffic offenses or people who have not been convicted. Secondly, they've been very clear that when they go to a house, if they find anybody who's undocumented there, everyone will be arrested regardless of whether or not they have any nexus to the criminal justice system.
And that's just a proximity effect, right? I mean,
well, talk to me more about what you just called collaterals, because Tom Homan said, quote, I don't think we arrested any families. We've arrested public safety threats and national security threats, bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes when you go on these operations, you knock on a door, and you're looking for a certain individual. You may or may not find that individual there, but you often find that someone's living with other undocumented people. So
Exactly.
group homes
Group
are
up.
very common, where you have multiple families living in the same house, or you might find that person's family unit there. Traditionally, during the Obama administration, we would direct ICE that unless the individual you encounter has a nexus to public safety, you don't take them into custody. This administration has been clear; they are arresting collaterals. John, look, in the coming weeks, we're going to see the data related to who was arrested in these raids, and it'll be very interesting to see what types of crimes the people were arrested for, and how many individuals were arrested without a nexus to any criminal history at all. Just knowing how ICE operations work, knowing the limited number of high-value targets that there are, I'm very confident that we'll see a lot of individuals who were arrested after having been charged with or maybe convicted of what would commonly be considered lower-level offenses, and a lot of these collaterals were arrested, individuals with no nexus to the criminal justice system at all.
And you think we'll see that data?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think
that would have to be made
historically,
public.
ICE does release that data, including during the Trump administration. And John, again, it's just very illustrative. If you look at the Trump administration data, in 2019, prior to COVID, they arrested something like 63,000 individuals who were just charged with or convicted of traffic offenses. And the bottom line, John, is again, there's just not that many of these good targets out there. But really, that raises another question, which is what's next? And you heard Tom Homan say, this is going to continue. We want to continue at this tempo through the full year. And I'm going to be very interested to seeing what type of targeting, who they start prioritizing after they exhaust this criminal population. This part of it is the low-hanging fruit of the system in a sense, because you can just run these records and get good leads of individuals who've been charged with or convicted of a crime. But that's the natural place you start. The question becomes, what do you do next? And I saw Tom Homan say that we maybe are going to focus on fugitives. But you have to remember, the fugitive in the immigration context is different than the criminal. This is not someone who's been charged with a crime, but someone who's been ordered to leave the United States by an immigration judge and didn't leave. Typically not a criminal population at all.
Yeah, so here's the thing. This is actually a really good one here. Not much rage and anger was spoken here. It's just raw facts here. The criminals are the ones that are definitely going to be the easiest ones to find because, bro, get them out of here, okay? The violent criminals specifically, the ones who have been through the police system by any means, right? Now, the next ones are probably going to be most likely, they need to hurry up with the asylum, okay? Because we know the ratio to actual people who are like validly claiming asylum versus the ones who are just completely not we know that ratio already. It's crazy. It's basically 80 to 90% are committing some type of asylum fraud. So we know these numbers here. So I think that's probably going to be the next one. Because like if you came into the country by walking through the border in a legal manner, and you came here, you claimed asylum, but you're not actually seeking asylum because you don't really, it doesn't work for your situation, then yeah, it's probably time for you to go, guys. Again, I know the cost of immigration. I get it. It's expensive. I know that. The United States of America is the most expensive country that I've ever had to pay to, for the most part, immigrate to. Not for me, but for my wife and my kid. I've immigrated to South Europe and Spain. I think it was somewhere around 200 euros. Don't quote me on that. I think it was something like that. South Korea was around 600, and these are the places where I have permanent residency, and so I get it. It's expensive. It's costly, specifically if you're coming from a place that doesn't have the same value of currency. I get that, but you have to do it the right way, guys. I don't know. Like your first act in this place should not be an act of trespassing. Just a thought. But either way, listen. You guys all have an absolutely amazing day. Enjoy your day, thoroughly. The fact that you just made it to the end of the video says a whole lot, actually. We have a couple other channels. MrLboyd Music, MrLboyd Movie Reacts, along with MrLboyd Discusses, where I just generally speak about the things that specifically matter to me. But in the meantime, I'll catch you guys later.